how Allah guides you in a manner only you can understand. Welcome to the final episode of Season 4. For now, I am setting aside the deeply personal stories. Writing them, reliving them, and pouring them out has been draining, but also a blessing I will never regret. I am forever grateful that I chose to share them. This was never just about me. I opened my wounds so that others could find healing in their own. I carried these stories to pave a way for my Muslim brothers and sisters, to remind you that Allah still speaks, still guides, still rescues. I wanted you to see that your pain does not disqualify you. You are enough. You are a believer. You are worthy of being saved. Every word I offered with love. Guiding through these reflections has been my greatest honor. And though this may be the last time I reveal myself this openly, unless I choose to again in the future, know that my intention was always sincere, to help you find your way back to Allah, and to remind you of the freedom that only He can give. There are moments in life when Allah reaches for you in ways the world will never recognize. It isn't a sign you can hold up to prove to anyone else. It isn't something you can explain without being misunderstood. It is quiet, personal, and wrapped in a kind of love that feels almost secret. And maybe that's why it works, because it was never meant for anyone else to validate. For me, His guidance never came in the loud, dramatic ways people expect. It came in the stillness between tears, in the unexpected song that spoke to my exact wound, in the fragile reminders that I was seen when I swore I was invisible. At times when I thought I was too lost, too damaged, or too far gone, He showed me that His way of guiding me would not look like anyone else's. It would be made only for me. And that's what kept me alive long enough to discover the truth. Allah's nearness was my real escape, my real freedom. The more I leaned into that guidance, the more I realized that this was the new high. Not the chaos, not the drugs, not the illusions that burned me from the inside out, but the peace that settled in me when I finally saw He had never left me at all. 1. I remember one night when I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. I thought for sure Allah had abandoned me. My chest felt empty, my eyes swollen, my heart heavier than it had ever been. In that moment of despair, I opened TikTok, not searching for anything, just scrolling in a daze. And a song came on out of nowhere. The words cut through me like they had been written for my soul alone. As long as I'm here, no one can hurt you. I froze, and then the tears fell harder. It was as if Allah Himself was speaking through those words, reminding me that He was still with me even when I couldn't feel Him. That song became a rope I clung to, proof that I wasn't forgotten, that my pain wasn't too much for Him to reach into. I cried some more, but this time the tears carried something different. A release, a comfort. It was hidden inside a song I wasn't even looking for. 2. There was another night when I knew I was drowning. Addiction had wrapped itself around me so tightly that I couldn't see a way out. The thought of ending it all pressed against my mind, heavy and constant. I was battling suicide in silence, wrestling with the feeling that maybe the world would be better without me. And then, out of nowhere, the song Liberated found me. The words didn't just play in the background. They cut straight into the war inside of me. The song said, "So little did I know that there's no turning back once you've committed the crime. How far I had to go. Too bad I never saw the warning signs in her eyes. Trying to escape, better yet disappear, from the person staring at me in the mirror. 'Cause she looks more and more unknown to me every day, and I tried relentlessly to keep her here. But she wants the end for us both to be near. Now it's either her or me, Only one of us can stay. So let this be my battle cry. 'Cause I'm fighting for my life, and I won't stop until I've made my way back to safe haven. No need for an alibi. When it's just me, myself, and I. But this time I'm going to rise up and find myself liberated. I broke down hearing that because it was everything I couldn't put into words. There were two versions of me, the broken, hurting one that wanted to disappear, and the one who longed to be free. Every day was a fight between them. It was like looking in the mirror and not recognizing myself anymore. The song wasn't just describing me, it was me. And looking back in that moment, I knew Allah was speaking to me through those lyrics. He gave me a voice of understanding when I had none of my own. It was His way of telling me, choose life, choose freedom, choose the new high I'm offering you. And deep down, even in my lowest place, I wanted to live. 3. Not long after, Allah showed me another sign. This time, not through music, but through nature itself. I came across two leaves, and they spoke to me without saying a word. The first one was fragile, worn thin, with holes scattered all throughout it. It looked like it had endured too much, barely holding itself together. I couldn't help but see myself in that leaf, broken, unhealed, full of wounds no one else could see. A year later, I found another leaf, almost the same color, almost the same shape, but this one was different. It was fuller, stronger, with fewer holes in it. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive, and it was healing. And in that simple comparison, I saw my own reflection again. The first leaf had been me in the depths of my pain, and the second leaf was proof that Allah had been healing me all along, even when I didn't notice. Those two leaves became more than just leaves to me. They were a mirror of my journey, a reminder that no matter how broken I felt, Allah was slowly filling in the holes, patching the parts of me I thought could never be restored. Even the leaves were whispering that the new high was never about escape. It was about growth. 4. When I finally hit 1 year free from fentanyl, I was at the gym, sweating, rebuilding myself piece by piece. That day, I opened my email to look for an old song I had written. But Allah had other plans. Instead of a song, I stumbled across a letter. A letter I had written to myself during the early months of my addiction, on a night in February 2021 when I was lonely, lost, confused, and unworthy. By Allah's will, I found it again in February 2024, the same month, the same week, 3 years later. The letter read, "Hey, you might be struggling from addiction, but I want to tell you you will be okay. I know you miss Diamond and Max, because when nobody had you, they were home always waiting to hug you. You miss how Diamond responded to her name when you called her. Truly, you miss happy moments because you feel stuck right now. Dad loves you for every moment you are alive and every breath you breathe. It's precious because you are here for your little brother. Nobody would be happy if they find out one day you are gone, because even if they don't say it, they still love you. It's not fair. Nobody checks up on you like they're supposed to. And I know you wish more than anything they loved you and respected you. I understand you have to keep trying no matter what. Let's talk about marriage. You want to meet the perfect man who looks into your eyes and you take away his breath. And you want your children to look at you and say, 'Mommy, I love you.' But it's like time isn't on your side. Every year is the same. Nobody truly loves you. Everyone lies, maybe just to get something and then leave. But let me just say they missed out on a great woman. I understand you're not perfect. But God doesn't make mistakes. You are alive for a reason, and I promise it'll get better. So what if they backstabbed you? So what if they hated you? So what if you're alone right now? Remember, God makes no mistakes. You are more than worthy. It's not your fault things seem to fail. It's human nature. And I know you would take your life in a heartbeat, but the thought of breaking Muhammad's heart kills you. I promise one day you will look back and realize you are the greatest gift God has given him. It's okay to not be okay. Sadness is not forever. When I read those words 3 years later, tears fell down my face, because that broken, addicted, lonely version of me had already planted a seed of survival for the woman I would become. Allah had whispered into my hand back then, making me write a testimony I wouldn't understand until the exact time I needed it most. Even the mention of my cats, Diamond, who ran away in the blizzard, and Max, who I had to surrender to the Humane Society when I was too unwell to care for him, reminded me of the little pieces of love Allah gave me to survive. The fact that I wrote this in February 2021, broken, lost, unworthy, and then opened it in February 2024, the exact month and week by Allah's will, is not coincidence. That is divine timing. That is Allah proving to me that He had already planted my survival inside me, even when I didn't know it. That letter is a miracle, because it's me speaking to myself through Him. In 2021, I didn't know if I would survive, but Allah did. And He made sure that version of me left behind a testimony, so when I was ready, the healed me could open it and say, Subhanallah, I was always being molded. Even the way I wrote about Diamond and Max was proof. Allah shows love through the things that comfort us. Pets, moments, memories. And the line about my father loving me for every breath. About living for my little brother. About not breaking Muhammad's heart. All of it was Allah speaking through my pen. He let my hand write what my soul already knew. I was worthy, loved, and meant to stay alive. It wasn't just a letter. It was living proof of my purpose. A reminder that even in my lowest nights, Allah was whispering, "You are alive for a reason." 5. Another way Allah guided me was through the books I found at the mosque. They weren't just pages, they were doors. Each one seemed to fall into my hands exactly when I needed it, as if Allah Himself was placing them there, saying, "Read this. It will help you grow." Some of the books had words that felt too big for me at first, almost like a foreign language. But instead of turning away, I treated it like school. I carried a notebook with me, and every time I came across a word I didn't understand, I wrote it down, looked it up, and studied its meaning. It became my own vocabulary journey, a way of reminding myself that even if I had been broken down, my mind was still sharp enough to learn, to grow, to expand. That process gave me a new kind of excitement. It wasn't just about the books themselves, but about discovering something new, step by step. Every word I learned felt like a small victory, proof that I was building a foundation inside myself that no one could take away. The new high wasn't only freedom from drugs, it was freedom through learning, through words, through the act of teaching myself that I was capable. 6. When I first came back to prayer, there was always one part that made me feel unsettled. Every time I reached the second half of Salah, when you're supposed to raise your finger and say the Shahada, my heart would tell me I was doing it wrong. I didn't know how to do it properly, so I kept pushing it off, telling myself I'd learn later. But later kept slipping by. Days passed, and I still didn't look it up. Then one day, While scrolling on TikTok, a video appeared out of nowhere. A man was teaching exactly how to do the second half of prayer, the part I'd been putting off. I stared at the screen, shocked. How did this come right in front of me when I hadn't searched for it, hadn't spoken it out loud? It felt like TikTok knew my thoughts. Still, I told myself I'd practice it later. And again, I forgot. A few days later, I went to Friday prayer at the mosque with my sister, my mom, and my little siblings. We prayed together, and when I got to that second half again, I did what I always did, still feeling guilty deep down that I didn't know it properly. After the prayer, I sat counting Allah's names with my fingers. My sister suddenly turned to me and asked, "Do you know how to do the second half of the prayer, where you raise your finger for the Shahada?" I froze. How could she know that this was exactly the part I'd been struggling with silently? I hadn't told her. I hadn't told anyone. Yet here she was, asking me directly. It felt like another sign, like Allah was guiding me through her. I told her no, and she explained what she had learned. I listened, determined to finally get it right, but a couple of days passed, and again I forgot to practice. And then, almost like Allah was reminding me a third time, another TikTok appeared while I was scrolling. Another man teaching how to do the Shahada properly in prayer. By then, I smiled to myself, realizing Allah must have been tired of me postponing what I already knew I needed to learn. This time, I didn't brush it off. I took out a notebook and a pen during my season of healing and isolation, the same time I was studying Black history and writing every day. I wrote down the Shahada word for word carefully and placed that piece of paper in front of me when I prayed. Finally, I was able to recite it correctly, with my finger raised, just as it should be. That is how I learned it, not just through TikTok or my sister, but through Allah guiding me again and again, until I could no longer ignore Him. To someone else, it might not seem like much, but for me, it was everything. It was Allah teaching me in a way that fit exactly where I was. I didn't need perfection. I needed access. And slowly, the prayers that once felt so far away began to take root in me. Every time I prayed, even in fragments, I could feel a spark of peace. That peace was the new high. Something real, something lasting, something mine. 7. For days my eyes were in pain. They burned when I tried to read. They throbbed when I tried to rest. And even when I closed them to sleep, the ache was still there. I didn't know what was causing it. I just knew it hurt, and no one else knew the weight of it but me. One day, I went to visit my sister. As we entered her building, she pointed to a small table near the entrance and said, "Oh, by the way, that's where people put things they don't want anymore. Sometimes food, sometimes random items." Curious, I went over to look. And there, stacked on the table, were boxes of eye drops. Not one bottle, stacks of them. I froze, staring, because that was exactly what I had been needing. Exactly what I hadn't told anyone about. Out of all the things that could have been left there, it was the very thing my body had been crying for. I picked them up and I knew immediately, this wasn't coincidence. This was Allah answering me directly. He had heard my pain when no one else had. He placed relief right in front of me in a way no human could have planned. And in that moment, the message was clear. Allah was reminding me that He sees every detail, even the hidden aches in my body, and He provides in ways that no one else can. That small bottle of eye drops became a sign, another whisper of the new high, the peace that comes when you realize Allah is answering you, even in the smallest needs. 8. There was a season before my isolation when my senses sharpened in a way I couldn't explain. It was like my whole body had been rewired. My ears caught things people didn't mean to reveal. My eyes saw more than the surface. And when people spoke, I could feel their souls pressing through their words. It was unsettling at times, but also undeniable. That's how it was whenever I found myself around the dealer and his victims. On the outside, it looked like just another transaction, another exchange between people trapped by addiction. But when I stood there, I saw something different. I could feel the weight of the dealer's choices, how he was carrying the sins of every soul he supplied. And I could feel the emptiness of the victims, their souls dimmed, their worth slipping from them with each exchange. To anyone else, it might have looked normal, even routine. But to me, it was a spiritual crime scene. Allah had given me a new sense of sight. Not physical sight, but discernment. I could see the wrongs in every detail, the cost that went far beyond money. It wasn't just drugs being passed around. It was dignity, faith, and self-worth being sold away piece by piece. That heightened awareness was painful, but it was also part of the new high. Because once you see like that, you can never unsee it. And in those moments, I knew Allah was preparing me, sharpening me, showing me the truth that would one day help me walk away. 9. One of the heaviest things I witnessed was the way drugs ripped mothers away from motherhood. You could see the love for their children still buried in them. They wanted to be there. They wanted to hold their kids close. But the grip of addiction pulled them out of reach. It was like watching a war inside of them. The mother in them cried for her child, but the addict in them couldn't stop reaching for the high, and the child was the one left hurting. Some mothers went even further down, forming intimacy with men who were dealers, men whose souls were already stained. They weren't just chasing drugs anymore. They were chasing love, safety, and closeness in places that could only offer darkness. But once you fall into that, the trap is even worse. Because now it isn't just a substance pulling you away, it's a relationship built on lies and poison. And while they're caught in that cycle, the necessities of their children, food, love, safety, guidance, are forgotten. What broke me most was watching them forget who they were. Mothers are treasures, not only to their children, but to themselves, to their communities, and most of all, to Allah. To lose sight of that is like being pulled into nothingness. And once they no longer feel that treasure within themselves, they lower themselves to places they were never meant to be. The tragedy is that nobody can truly pull them out. There is no village, no strong community teaching in the deep way it needs to be taught. People might give advice, people might speak words, but it never goes deep enough, because words from humans can only plant seeds. It is Allah who waters them. It is Allah who grabs hold, shakes a woman awake, and lifts her from a pit no one else could ever drag her out of. And I believe it's in those lowest spaces where Allah whispers to the heart, "Aren't you tired of being sad? Aren't you tired of being used? Aren't you tired of not being good enough for your kids? Aren't you tired of being tired?" That's what I saw him telling them, but most of them were too asleep to hear it. 10. There was a time when I thought I could trust someone because he was from my country, someone I had known as a friend. We weren't close in a romantic way, never that, but we spoke often, and sometimes he tried to be alone with me. He wanted something serious, but I kept him in the friend zone. The truth was, I never let him cross that line because he carried an energy that made me feel like he thought he could sleep with me if he wanted. That wasn't me, and I wasn't about to let him treat me like that. He was struggling too, living in a kind of spiritual psychosis. He wore crystals, spoke of God having brothers and sisters. Things forbidden in Islam, things that cut deep for me because no matter what, I never played about Tawheed, the oneness of God. Still, I was forgiving with him, maybe too forgiving, because I felt as if he was lost. One night during a relapse, I was drinking, high off bars for the first time, and he said, "Let's go somewhere." I agreed without really thinking. The plan was just to hang out. But when we got there, I ended up across from a black man I had never met. We were talking casually, but I must have looked nervous, because suddenly he asked me, "Do you even know why you're here?" I laughed it off and said, "To hang out, drink, that's all." But he pressed me, kept asking if I knew why. And in that moment, it started to click. There had been a deal. The man who brought me there had placed a price tag on me. I hadn't known it, but I had been brought to be sold. I broke down crying. The man sitting across from me looked at me differently then. He saw how young I was, how broken I seemed, and he felt bad. Instead of taking advantage, he looked out for me the entire night. He made sure nothing happened to me. Once again, Allah had placed protection around me when I didn't even know the danger I was in. Later that morning, I tried to drive home, but exhaustion and the high weighed me down. I pulled into a gas station, left the pump in the car, and fell asleep. Hours later, I woke up. I know deep in my heart that if I had made it onto the highway that morning, I would not have survived. Allah had saved me twice in one night. 11. Later in life, reminders of that darkness came back in unexpected ways. One time I was standing with a group of co-workers when they began joking about selling women. To them it was just talk, something to laugh about. But to me it wasn't funny at all. It made me sick, because I knew the reality. Countless women lived through that horror, and here they were treating it like a joke. Their laughter showed me how careless people can be with the suffering of others, how blind men can be to the emotional well-being of women. In that moment, I saw them differently, as if selling women meant nothing to them, as if humanity itself didn't matter. 12. Not long after, I met a woman outside of a building who had a pimp. She looked hollow, broken, as if her soul had already been drained away. She asked to use my phone so she could call him, not because she wanted to, but because he was the only one who could give her a place to sleep. I let her use it, and as I watched her dial his number, my heart broke. To see one of our own women reduced to that, dependent on her oppressor just to survive, was unbearable. I tried to speak to her, to give her something more than a phone call. I told her, "Don't abandon God." She nodded softly and said that sometimes she still spoke to him. That tiny answer gave me hope, but I could also see how far gone she felt. It was like her body was still standing in front of me, but her spirit was already buried under the weight of what had been done to her. Those moments reminded me of the truth. Women are being treated as disposable, as products, as jokes. And yet Allah reminded me through them what He had already shown me in my own life, that no matter how others try to use you, own you, or break you, with Him you can never truly belong to anyone else. 13. I've come across women whose pain was heavier than words could hold. They were mothers who had lost their children to the government, most likely because of drug abuse. And after that, they were never the same. You could see it in their eyes, how losing their children tore out the last piece of themselves that kept them human. Their children had been their safe space, the one thing to hold on to when everything else was falling apart. Once that was gone, it was as if the ground gave way beneath them. Some accepted their fate with a numbness that was hard to watch. They said things like, "I'll never get them back," and you could tell they truly believed it. They no longer fought for themselves, no longer believed they were worthy of being restored. Others spiraled deeper into the fog of drugs, unable to process the danger they had already put everyone around them in. It struck me that these weren't just individual tragedies. When a mother loses her children, the whole community loses too, because a mother is a cornerstone for her kids, for herself, for her people. And when drugs strip her away, it's not only her who suffers. Seeing these women reminded me of something I had already learned. Once again, human beings can only offer seeds of guidance, but it is Allah who restores. Only He can take a mother who feels she has been reduced to nothing and remind her that she is still precious, still seen, still capable of being lifted again. 14. During one of my relapse seasons, I met a woman whose story broke me open. We sat together, and as she spoke, I felt like I was living her life with her. Her pain was so raw that it filled the air between us. She told me how both she and her brother had been addicted to heavy substances. They grew up taking care of each other, trying to survive in a house where even their own mother was using. Drugs weren't just in their lives, they were in their bloodline, passing from one hand to another until there was no safe place left. One night, high together, the unthinkable happened. She said she and her brother crossed a line, experimenting on each other in their haze. That moment ruined them both. She said it shattered her reality, and it shattered his. Her brother never recovered. The weight of it, combined with the addiction that already had him chained, pushed him past the edge. Eventually, he took his own life. As she spoke, I could see how his death lingered in her eyes. She hadn't been the same since. Her relationship with her mother, who still used, had grown distant, and most of her children, the ones who should have been her safe place, were no longer around her. She saw them rarely, and even when she needed them most, they weren't there. She carried her grief like a heavy cloak she could never take off. Listening to her, I felt gutted. Her whole family, mother, brother, herself, even the way her children were scattered, had been consumed by drugs. This was a reality no one should have to live. God does not want this for His creation. God wants peace, clarity, and safety. But here she was, living proof of what happens when that peace is stolen. And yet, she was still my favorite person during that time, because even in all her pain, she could still talk about God. Toward the end of my addiction, we sat together again and spoke about Him. She shared her view of God, and I shared mine. That connection, two broken souls still reaching upward, was something I will never forget. The last time I saw her, I told her, "Every time I get high, bad things happen to me. I feel like I have a higher calling, so I won't be buying anymore. I'm going to get sober and fix my life." She looked at me and simply said, "Okay." She wished me well. And now, looking back, I see the mercy in that moment. Because I did walk away, I did choose life, and today I am free. 15. The longer I was around people caught in addiction, the clearer I saw how drugs weren't just destroying individuals. They were destroying entire communities from the inside out. It wasn't just about someone getting high. It was about what people were willing to do once their minds were clouded. I saw women and men spread rumors, betray one another, even set up their own families and friends, because no one was in the right state of mind to value God or human life. Trust disappeared. Loyalty disappeared. And the saddest part was watching it become normal. People didn't even realize how far they had fallen. Children weren't safe either. I saw kids as young as 8 being taught to sell, to distribute, to step into a world that promised them nothing but destruction. They were handed false hopes, the idea that one day they could be king of the ghetto, that money and drugs could crown them. But it was all a lie, a setup, because that kingdom always crumbled, and in chasing it, they lost the chance to know the real inheritance God had for them. Being in that environment showed me the deepest wrong. Anyone who teaches God's creation not to fear Him is setting them up for failure. To strip people of their faith, their innocence, their worth, that is a crime bigger than the streets themselves. And this is where Allah made me see it clearly. That false high will never last. It only leads to betrayal, destruction, and loss. But the new high, the one Allah was pulling me toward all along, is peace, clarity, and freedom. And once I tasted that, I knew I could never go back. 16. During my isolation, the loneliest season of my life, I had no friends, no outings, no distractions. I spent my days studying Black history and relearning my deen, piecing my faith back together for what felt like the 100th time. I had lost everything, and in those nights I cried myself to sleep. I felt stripped down to nothing but my soul. One night, after falling asleep in tears, I had a dream. In it, I was taken to a place and a time that felt achingly familiar. I was sitting beneath a tree, wearing pants, sneakers, and a simple shirt. As I sat there, I heard something beyond human words. The closest I can describe is that Allah spoke to me, not in a voice the way people imagine, but in a knowing that filled my chest. He said, "Do you remember this time and place? I was with you." I didn't answer, but I didn't need to. In that moment, I knew He had always been there, even in the times I felt abandoned. I woke up instantly, my sadness held like a child being cradled. Allah had spoken into my heart just enough to make sure I understood. Trust me, I have never left you. 17. Another time, when I was homeless, He guided my steps to a cemetery. I found myself sitting under the shade of a tree, staring directly at the graves. I began speaking to the dead, telling them how jealous I was of their stillness. They no longer had to feel pain, no longer had to endure the chaos of life. Time was forever frozen for them. Looking back, I know Allah led me there. He wanted me to reflect on death, on life, and on the truth that everything in this world is temporary. Those moments, the dream under the tree, and the quiet of the cemetery, became part of how He shaped me. They were steps toward the new high, steps that reminded me that I was never walking alone, even when I thought I was. 18. After my isolation, when Allah placed me back into real life again, I had an encounter that left me stunned. I was driving to work when I saw a young, dark-skinned woman standing on the corner of the street. She wore a tank top, her belly showing, and in her hand was a suitcase filled with all she owned. The moment I saw her, I was reminded of myself, all the times I had walked outside with nowhere to go, lost but still moving. In my heart, I whispered to Allah, "Please look after her the way you have looked after me. Please provide for her the way you provided for me." I drove to work, parked, and clocked in. A few minutes later, as I was ringing up a customer, I looked up, and there she was, the same girl I had just prayed for, standing in front of me at my register. She was trying to buy something, but only had a handful of change. A deep sorrow welled up in me as I watched her count the coins in her palm. I felt her struggle in my own chest, the way I had once felt mine. Out of that empathy, I told her to walk through the store freely, to pick up whatever she needed, and I would cover it. That day, I paid for her. Later that night, sitting alone, I reflected on what had happened. I had prayed for Allah to provide for her, and then Allah placed her directly in front of me, making me the one to provide. He didn't just answer my prayer, He allowed me to become the answer. That intimacy with God deepened my love for my deen even more. It showed me that my relationship with Him was alive, direct, undeniable. 19. I have never in my life made a prayer for Allah to bless the angels who protect us, the believers and non-believers. But this one particular night in isolation, the night I felt sorrow and emptiness, I took in my late prayer, reciting with my heart broken and defeated. I heard Allah say to me so softly yet so clear, "My beloved servant." And it's not like I can tell you it's any human voice I ever heard either. That night I bowed and burst into tears. Every verse I recited, tears fell, and I realized in this moment all the times I was about to die, Allah saved me. Nights where I was walking completely alone with no safety, and I whispered for Allah's protection. He answered. So I put my head down. I read Al-Ikhlas, and each time I recited it, I mentioned every angel who protected me from dawn to latest of night to be blessed. Surely I was ungrateful. That night I went to sleep. I seen a dream of multiple birds and the reciting of Surah 100 Adiyat, recited by 1,000 men, so beautifully. I didn't know the whole meaning. My mother explained later it's about Allah swearing by the charging horses of war, their panting, their hooves striking sparks of fire, as they gallop into battle at dawn. This was explained in my language. 2 days later, a TikTok video of this Asian man starts explaining how the Quran itself speaks on the sound the hooves make. To me, it was Allah beautifully explaining my dream. I sincerely felt immense love from Allah. 20. During my isolation, I often felt hollow. Every day carried the weight of depression and loneliness. I wasn't myself, and deep down, I felt like I wasn't worthy of happiness. One of those days, I was scrolling through TikTok when a man appeared, reciting a hadith about how much Allah loves certain people. The words struck my heart as if they were meant directly for me. Allah said, "My servant draws near to me with the things I have made obligatory, and then he keeps drawing near with extra good deeds until I love him. When I love him, I become his hearing with which he hears, his sight with which he sees, his hand with which he acts, and his foot with which he walks. If he asks me, I will surely give him. If he seeks my protection, I will surely protect him. And when it comes to death, my servant dislikes it, and I dislike hurting him." Hadith Qudsi, Sahih Bukhari. As I listened, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, love filling my heart. The words wrapped around me like a reminder that I was still worthy, still seen by Allah, still carried, because even in my darkest sins, even in the nights I overdosed, Allah could have taken my soul. But He didn't. Instead, He woke me up again, He pulled me back into the present moment, giving me another chance. Looking back, I see now how he had been showing me his love all along, when he guided me to the cemetery to reflect on death, when he visited me in dreams and reminded me he had always been with me, when he answered my prayers directly in front of me, when he placed eye drops in my path for my pain, when he gave me 2 pens to write my story so it would never be lost. Every sign was him telling me, I love you. I am carrying you. And that hadith, the one that came to me on TikTok in my season of sorrow, has stayed with me ever since. It reminded me that I am one of those people Allah loves, and that love is the only reason I am still here today.